children, let's go down, come on down. Oh, children, let's go down to the rivers to pray.
I take a lot for granted. I have no idea how my Prius works, or how the traffic lights I pass through on my way to church this morning work, or how the light switches in my home work, but I expect them all to work. I don't really know where this water comes from either. I just know that I lifted the handle of the kitchen sink this morning and water came out. I do know that W.R. Hallway, an engineer from MIT and one of the founders of this church, was charged with bringing fresh, clear water to the burgeoning oil boomtown of Tulsa back around 1920, and that he recommended Lake Spavinaw be the source of our water. And that although he faced opposition, including from his friend and co-founder of the church, Richard Lloyd Jones, who wanted the water to come from Shell Creek, near Sand Springs, that Hallway's plan was chosen. But I don't know where our water comes from today, or how high or low the water levels in our lakes or rivers or underground aquifers are. Do you? In the Unitarian church, of course, there will be some who know. You can talk to her later. But I take a lot for granted. I don't know where the water I flush down the toilet goes, but I do know that in the future we will very likely be drinking it. Purified wastewater, that is, or as they call it in California, advanced purified water. I just know when I turn on the tap, water comes out. I know that I can buy water in bottles if I prefer not to drink tap water, and that I can purify water in my own home using a filter. I assume that I can have the amenities I need and some of the luxuries I want, and I assume that many of you do the same. And I don't think my choices are unusual. To the contrary, they seem ordinary. Like water itself, because, well, water's everywhere. You probably know not only is 70% of the earth covered by water, but we are 70% water ourselves. Even though we don't feel that fluid most of the time, we seem to be more solid, because the percentage reflects that there's water in every one of the 30 to 40 trillion cells in our bodies. In the cells that make our blood circulate or flow, in the cells that make our skin elastic or stretchy, even in the cells that make our stiffer and breakable bones, and certainly in the cells that allow our eyes to be wet and watery, to create and cry tears. But I take all those mysterious completions of my body very much for granted too. The plumbing works. I cry often and easily enough, so I don't worry about it too much. I don't think I'm unusual in this regard either. Until our bodies stop working the way they're supposed to, it's easy to take them for granted. It can be that way even with people. We sometimes don't notice them until they don't show up, or until they're not in our lives anymore. Or we expect certain behaviors from people and only notice the person when they surprise or disappoint us or annoy us. For example, I expect people in stores and businesses to listen to me and to treat me with a certain degree of respect. And I'm sometimes upset or even offended when they don't. All of a sudden, I notice them. And I don't like it much these days when instructors in my exercise classes seem overly concerned with my hips or my knees. I take my body's abilities for granted, and I don't like being reminded that my age might become or already is a limiting factor. Now, you know better than I what you take for granted in your own lives. It may even be your own spouse or a parent or a child. It's not that unusual to take extra effort with friends, to spend a long time on the phone or stay out a little later and neglect the people we're closer to. We expect certain people to stick with us through thick and thin, to be there for us no matter what. But how many marriages have we seen end because people took each other for granted? How many families have we seen fall apart because after the death of a parent or an important figure, other relationships had been neglected? Like love, it's tempting to take water for granted too. We can't imagine life without it, so it becomes almost invisible. It kind of is invisible. We can easily forget to notice it or to value it. But water is life, literally, and death. The news is a constant reminder that when disaster strikes, it strikes with water more often than not. Hurricanes Harvey, Irma, and Maria are a reminder this fall. Droughts and floods and heat waves and landslides and tsunamis all are becoming more frequent and more intense. We not only take water for granted, but sometimes we seem to be in denial about its power, not only to create, but to destroy life and our dependence on it. Although in Oklahoma, with our history of the dangerous, dry, deadly Dust Bowl years, you would think we would remember. We do forget, though. And so we're going to take a few minutes this morning to review and remember what we know about water. There is the same amount of water on the earth today as there was when the planet was created. The same amount. You may remember learning in school how water is how we are in a closed biosystem. Not only do we have the same amount of water, and will always have only the same amount of water, it is the very same water. The raindrops that fell earlier this week and the teardrops you cried and the water in my red Etsy cup here are all made of the same water that make the lake you like to swim in, that filled and flowed through the veins of the great dinosaurs long ago, and that formed the tears children cried thousands of years ago. It's all the same water. It's astonishing to feel our interconnectedness through matter and through time. And to notice that this time the Hebrew Bible seems close to getting it right. In the beginning, God said, "Let the waters below the heavens be gathered into one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. God called the dry land earth, and the gathering of the waters he called seas. And God saw that it was good. No more water can or will be created. I don't know how much time you've spent looking at the Simple Gifts 2 painting in the foyer. How many people know that painting well? Nice. It's made of symbols that represent the fundamentals of our faith, and in it, water is used as the symbol for the reality that we call God. Spirit of life, some of us might call it. If you're less religious and more scientifically minded, the metaphor still works because water, like God, for believers, is the source of all life. The first organisms on this planet evolved in the early watery wombs, in ponds and streams, just as our babies grow inside a watery sack today. A splash of water in the face revives us. And like the words and images we use for ultimate things, Gaia, Great Spirit, higher power, collective consciousness, water too changes form. It shifts shape and has many names. As each world religion is expressed by different teachers using different texts through different languages and rituals, water is expressed, is embodied as rain and snow and sleet and hail, lake, pond, river, stream, storm, sea, ocean, bay, wave, waterfall, hurricane, cove, gentle shower, and mist. It is boiling hot and freezing cold, frozen and fluid. It is internal and external. It is part of us. We depend on it, and it is beyond our control. Water is life and death. But unlike God or love, the world is running out of fresh water. More precisely, we are using fresh water faster than it is being replenished, faster than it can sink back into the earth. And because there will always be the same amount of water on our planet, the resource is finite, which means we can run out of drinkable, usable, potable, fresh water. The statistics are not reassuring, but I'm still going to share a few with you this morning. By the year 2025, the United Nations projects that 2/3 of the world's population will be living with serious water shortages, while 1/3 may be living with absolute water scarcity. Already 1 in 9 people worldwide do not have access to safe and clean drinking water. And nearly 1 out of every 5 deaths under the age of 5 worldwide is due to a water-related disease. As the powerful song the choir sang for us says, the water is troubled and troubling. We don't simply understand that we could run out of water. In many cases, we already have. Just a few months ago in June in Masham, Oklahoma, a small town here in Oklahoma, our neighbors had to make do without running water for 3 weeks. Masham resident Roger Green said, going that long without being able to bathe or cook or drink water at home wasn't easy. Just like using the restrooms, Green said, you either go outside or you go to town, depending on what you've got to do. Tempers were running high. It was a long time, and people got really aggravated, he said. Water finally started flowing out of people's faucets again after water district crews were finally able to locate and patch a major leak. Now, there's several reasons we are running out of water. Water may be God's gift, but she didn't lay the pipes, is one. Pipes need upkeep. Another is that per capita water consumption is doubling every 20 years, more than twice the rate of human population growth, which itself is exploding. NASA satellite data shows that fresh water from 21 of the world's largest 37 aquifers is being withdrawn faster than it can be replenished. Agriculture and new industries like the computer industry are big consumers. Pollution of the world's surface water systems, destruction of wetlands, and the dumping of pesticides and fertilizers into waterways all diminish our supply of clean water. Keep breathing. When California water policy analyst Omar Carrillo was asked to comment about a 3-year drought in California, he said, you know about the silver lining to the drought, don't you? We don't have to worry about drinking contaminated water because we don't have any. Perhaps because residents of California, and some of you may have friends or family there, already know what it's like to live with strict water rationing, intentionally letting lawns die, water bills going up if you're not conserving water. California has passed a human right to water law. It's the only state in the country that has so far. The United States abstained from the United Nations vote in 2010, refusing to recognize access to water as a human right, while the world trade in water is a multi-billion-dollar growing industry. So I'm enjoying water while it's still free, as we all are. Here at home, according to the Oklahoma Water Resource Board, Oklahoma will be unable to meet its water demands by the year 2060. Now, I don't expect to be alive by then, but I imagine my children and their children will be. And I love water. I love waterfalls. I love watching water. I love taking showers and baths. I love swimming in a lake or in a pool, indoors or outdoors, in the ocean or the sea. I love the word rote. Do you know that word? And the sound it describes. It's a special word for the sound the tiny waves in a lake make as they break and ripple up onto shore. Rote. It's soothing and repetitive, that sound, which is where we get the expression to learn something by rote, by repeating it until we know it from memory. I remember learning to swim in a lake when I was a little girl in Massachusetts. My mother tells me how I would hold my nose with one hand, then shout out, "Be brave, be strong." Something I learned from Mr. Rogers, I think. Before I jumped off the dock into the water again and again and again, and how she would have to make me get out of the water when my lips turned blue and wouldn't stop trembling because I was so cold. And today I still dream of living on or near a lake someday. And I know how amazing it feels to take a long gulp of cold water after a long, hot bicycle ride. How it feels like I can't drink long enough. I love water. Do you love water? Do you love water? Yes. Okay, one more time louder than that. Do you love water?
Yes.
I ask because what we love, we protect. And what we consider sacred, we also protect. But what we take for granted is much more easily destroyed, whether our neglect is due to denial or distractions. It's easy to take people for granted, and it's easy to take water for granted. Or it was, because that's changing slowly, which is good. It's been easier for the wealthy to not see because the poor are disproportionately affected by natural disasters and pollutions. But as we saw in Florida, water will destroy the homes and boats and businesses of the wealthy as well. And years before lead and other toxic substances were discovered in the public water supply in Flint, Michigan, the United Nations condemned the city, this is before Flint, for violating the fundamental rights of its own residents after a spate of utility shutoffs left thousands of poor households in the city without water to bathe in or cook with. The United Nations said the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is fully applicable to the United States, too. It's a mistake to take water for granted today. I don't know what it feels like to walk for miles every day in search of clean water, or what it feels like to carry a 40-pound jug of water back the same distance so my family can wash and cook and eat and drink, and then do the same thing the next day and the next and the next. But I know that millions of girls and women do precisely that every day. But one way to remember how important or even sacred something is to create a ritual around it. So I've created a ritual around water because I cannot create beautiful art like this. I've created a ritual that I plan on practicing, especially this month when our theme is death. I'm going to offer just a drop of water back to the earth each time I fill my glass or my Etsy or make coffee. Yes, it's true, you can't make coffee either without water, folks. And if I'm outdoors, I'll spill a few drops of water on the earth. If I'm indoors, I plan to put just a drop of water on my own skin, knowing that from dust I have come, and to dust we shall all return. I plan to do this as a reminder that water is a finite resource. I plan to do this so I'll remember that a river runs through all of us. I plan to do this as a reminder to be grateful as well for the many, so many things I take for granted. What would my life be like, I wonder? What would our lives be like if we didn't take anything or anyone for granted? Listen. There's only one way to find out. Amen. You're visiting with us online today. We love connecting with people all across the country and around the world, sharing our powerful message of love beyond belief.
There's something new happening here. You can now join All Souls as a virtual member. Our virtual membership is designed for friends who live outside of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and who want to engage with All Souls in a meaningful way.
You can be part of an expanding family, a global family really, wherever you are. If you live in Oklahoma,
Ohio,
or Orange County, California,
Canada,
or Cameroon. By becoming a virtual member, you'll be able to deepen your connections with members and friends here in Tulsa and with members wherever you are.
Each week, you'll receive special All Souls content tailored for you, our virtual members. Virtual members have access to pastoral care, to personal prayers, and also receive invitations to exclusive web events.
You can learn more, and if you're ready, you can become a virtual member today by visiting allsoulschurch.org/virtual membership.
We're grateful our ministries are having a positive impact on your life, and we want to share the good news of love beyond belief with more and more people. So no matter what, we need your support to keep this ministry growing and thriving, so please consider making a gift today. You can do so by texting
Love BB for Love Beyond Belief to 73256, or simply visit our website. You are a blessing in our lives. May you be blessed.
and be a blessing.